What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Svenson, and today we're going to be talking about the price of Bitcoin. And I also want to discuss the action that we've seen in the stock market recently. Bitcoin is currently up about 0.4%, and we are trading at $7,050. This is the price level that we discussed in yesterday's video. And right now, the S&P is up over 1.5%. For those of you that are familiar with my content, and for those of you that have been watching this channel since the stock market crashed, you may remember that on March 19th, we were discussing my predictions for the stock market and where I think we would be headed next. The stock market has actually done almost exactly what I discussed in my March 19th video. Let's play the clip. The stock market seems to be getting pretty close to a low point. At least a temporary low. If the traditional markets can play out at least a temporary bounce in the short term or in the medium term, this would provide the recovery that Bitcoin needs to see going into the halving. So the stock market is playing out that bounce that I was looking for. And also in that video, I discussed Bitcoin seeing a recovery with that bounce, and that has all played out. So right now, what I'm trying to figure out is when is this reversal going to take place? Because we are most likely going to see a lot of volatility in the stock market, huge upswings, huge downswings. For the next few months, maybe even the next year, I would expect a lot of volatility moving forward. So we're going to be looking at Bitcoin and the S&P. Right now, I'm looking at the CryptoWatch homepage. Bitcoin is currently trading at $7,050, up over 0.5%. Ethereum back to 170. And a lot of the top cryptos are sort of just trading sideways with Bitcoin. Now, looking at the weekly chart, just to recap, on this channel, if you remember, when we had that first initial dump down to 3,858, we saw this weekly volume spike, and we identified this as a reversal point and a low point for Bitcoin, and that we would very likely see a bounce back. And we've gotten that bounce back, and we've seen a ton of buy action as a result. Now, looking at the daily chart, we can see that since the crash, things have been pretty good. As you guys know on this channel, I've been pretty bullish for the past few weeks, and that bullish bias has been working in my favor. And in yesterday's video, we discussed the $7,050 level. Right now, we're actually falling below that level, trading at $7,035. But what's most interesting in the chart right now is the downward sloping resistance. If you're looking at log scale and you map out your resistance, Bitcoin has actually been fighting this resistance recently. If you're looking at the 4-hour chart, we can see that we've been getting resistance along this downward sloping resistance line. And in yesterday's video, we discussed the $7,050 level, which is sitting right in the middle of all this action right here. You know, we were talking about how we need to get above this downward sloping resistance, retest it as new support, and get a rally. And that would be bullish confirmation. We haven't necessarily got the confirmation just yet, but what's good to see is that we are, retesting it as potential new support right now. And as long as we can hold this level, then it's possible that we may actually play out this bounce. And on Easter, we found resistance at 7,200, and we actually got some rejection off of 7,200 yesterday. So even if we do play out a bounce off of the downward sloping resistance as potential new support, we need to get above 7,200 after that. If we get above 7,200, in my opinion, that probably means the bulls have enough momentum to break 74.66 at that point. 7,200 is going to be the next key resistance to break. As long as we're holding above the downward sloping resistance, I'm looking for something like this right now. And then the next thing to do for the bulls would be to break 7,200. Looking at the daily chart again, we had a little bit of support coming to the market around 7,700. And we had a lot of resistance in this area before. And we also had support in this area back in 2019, October. So I would say 7,700 most likely would be the next target to the upside. If we do break above our resistance here, I'd be looking for about 7,700. And like I've been saying, as long as we're holding 64.30, which is that 2019 low, then this recovery is looking pretty good and the bulls are holding good market structure. And of course, looking at the daily chart, if we do break below 64.30, at that point, of course, it becomes likely that we would see some downside. At that point, you'd be looking for 5,800, maybe even lower, 5,400, and then we would have to see what happens from there. But personally, I think this is less likely. Personally, I'm still holding a bullish bias, and I do think that the bulls have the momentum right now, and we could see a continued rally. One thing that could stop Bitcoin from having a continued bullish recovery is the stock market, is if the stock market sees a reversal in the near term, and we see major downside, and there's a lot of uncertainty. That could stop Bitcoin's recovery. I don't think we're going to go below these lows here. I think it's very unlikely, seeing that we had record weekly volume and record buys happen at that level. But one thing that could take place is if the stock market sees a major reversal, Bitcoin could come back to test lower prices. Something like that is totally possible. But looking at history, we know that Bitcoin is not always correlated. It's actually very circumstantial. There was a period of time where recently the stock market was actually seeing lower lows and Bitcoin was actually seeing a recovery. And then once the stock market recovered, then we saw a major push in the price of Bitcoin. So with that being said, we have to remember that sometimes the demand for Bitcoin can go against the stock market. If there's enough demand for Bitcoin at these low levels, we can actually see upside while the stock market is dropping. We saw that happen a few weeks ago. So with all that in mind, as you guys remember in the beginning of the video, we saw that push to the upside that I was looking for a few weeks ago, right? We saw that bounce off that support. We saw the rally. We got the structure that I was looking for. What I think is most likely right now is that we probably will see some more upside, possibly upwards of $3,000 for the S&P. And then maybe at that point we would see some instability and some volatility in the market. Of course, there's a lot of people right now that think that we're going to see much lower prices, that, the stock market is just being manipulated up and that we're going to crash again. And I actually don't think so. I don't think we're going to see a huge crash in the stock market at this point. I think the Fed is pumping enough money to prop this up at the moment. I think most likely we're going to see a push up towards 3,000 and probably see a reversal around that area. It's hard to tell exactly what it's going to look like. Is the reversal going to be quick? Is it going to be more prolonged? More of a stair step down afterward? It's hard to tell. And it's hard to know exactly how Bitcoin would react to something like this. I've done a few videos in the past where I discussed the correlation between the stock market and Bitcoin. And the conclusion that I came to in those videos was that Bitcoin correlates strongest with the stock market when the environment is extreme, when you have extreme bullishness and extreme confidence or extreme fear, right? That's when Bitcoin correlates the most. All the in-between stuff, Bitcoin kind of does its own thing. So if we see a really quick pullback in the stock market, Bitcoin could see a pullback as well. If the stock market sees more of a methodical sell-off and a slow pullback like this, then Bitcoin may not have as strong of a reaction. Maybe Bitcoin can kind of do its own thing. There's definitely going to be certain days. Where Bitcoin is going to be correlating with the stock market, but it doesn't have to be every single day. That's kind of my point here. And also it's hard to tell. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. The quarantines, the economic lockdown, at least in the United States, will probably end in the next month or two. So, maybe we see a sell-off for the next month, and then after that we see a recovery for the stock market. And, it's hard to tell. It's actually hard to tell in my opinion. A lot of people are so certain that the stock market is just going to collapse again, but I'm actually skeptical of that. I actually think it's possible that we could see a recovery sooner rather than later. Of course, there's record unemployment right now, but once the economy reopens again, we're going to see record numbers of reemployment as well. Is it possible that the stock market could see lower prices at some point? It's totally possible. This recession could continue. But in my opinion, it's actually hard to tell what's going to happen. Like, just to mention the fact that when we were sitting at these levels, a lot of people thought I was crazy for thinking that we would see a straight shot to the upside. But that's exactly what's happened here recently. And my point recently has been that we are in a health crisis, which is turning into an economic crisis, but this crisis did not begin due to a financial issue. This crisis began due to a health crisis, not a financial crisis. So is it possible that we may see a quicker recovery than most people think? I think that is actually possible. I think it's actually in the cards, but it's hard to tell. I would not be surprised to see a continued recession at some point before actually finding a low. But I just wanted to explain to you guys how I'm thinking about this situation. So anyway, going back to Bitcoin on the 4-hour chart, we're above our downward sloping resistance. So this is good. We've broken that resistance and we are coming back potentially to test it as support. If we can hold this level and get a bounce and break above 7,200, at that point, I think things would get quite bullish for Bitcoin. We could be looking to test upwards of 7,700. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely hit the like button on this video, share it with your friends. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you like this content. And if you want to support my work here on this channel, you can join the Patreon. And in the Patreon, you get extra content. You can take a look at my altcoin portfolio that I'm using CryptoWatch to manage. Guys, definitely sign up with CryptoWatch. It is my preferred platform for charting and trading. But anyway, guys, I will see you in the next video.